Hey YouTube, welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video with Mr. Terry as I continue my quest for historical knowledge here on the internet. Alright, the time has finally come. It's time to check out a video from Alternative History Hub. This channel is easily one of the most recommended channels that I get. From what I understand from this channel, they obviously go into alternative history, which kind of is around the idea of the what-ifs of history, right? If a certain event or process or something had happened differently, what would that look like? And, you know, history is, of course, full of those moments. Things that, again, if it had gone differently, you'd be reality could be a very different thing. And it also, I think, makes for, you know, really good debate, because I think it's far easier to debate something that could happen more than something that has happened. And I think that's why this kind of study and topic is very popular amongst people. So I think it was time to go ahead and get in. So I went to their channel. Now I've had a lot of different specific videos recommended me. So I went to their channel and found out some of their more popular videos. And this was kind of one of the first, the kind of highest viewed, it looked like, one they kind of had. And it looks like a good place to start, which is what if Germany won World War I? So we're watching a part 1 video today. So we'll get started here in just a second. As I always do, if you liked this original video, there'll be a description down below, and make sure to support the original content creators with their work here. And if you haven't subbed and like the idea of kind of joining me here as a history teacher, trying to continue furthering his knowledge, make sure to subscribe, and I'd love to have you on board here. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Let's do this. What if Germany won World War I, Part 1.
Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Take it on the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them calling you and me, every son of liberty.
Okay, part 1. Victory of the Kaiser. Kaiser's the leader of Germany.
World War I was called the war to end all wars. Europe was now at a new age, a crisis, where tradition and the modern day were increasingly at odds. Industrialization progressed faster than the mentality did. The old noble ways of gentleman war clashed with the brutal reality of the trenches, and because of this, millions died. World War I.
So, yeah, there's that classic thing, right? It was going to be the war to end all wars, and of course we know that's true. But there is something I think you can say about World War I. It is the war to change all wars. War will never be the same after World War I. The technologies, the strategy, and overall the view of war. War had such a classical romanticism often to it, at least in the way that it was taught and a part of these cultures here in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And that obviously changes with World War I. There was none of these glorious cavalry charges that these young, young soldiers had heard about from their grandfathers and all this in these victorious moments. And one famous line is, war will never be, glorious again, because there's really no glory in sitting in a trench for months on end waiting to get blown up. Where's the glory in that? So it disillusioned people for sure.
Was the war to end them all, because this was the last time the old European ideals would fight.
True.
The last time monarchies would reign.
Beginning of the end of empires.
New ideas
no doubt.
replaced them for this industrial world, like fascism and communism. Simply put,
Sure.
set the stage for the next. Germany in our timeline
No doubt.
brought Russia into civil war, caused immunity in France, and almost broke the Allies in 1917. Before you know, America. It was just by bad decisions that we saw a 20th century of American ascendance, when it easily could have become the German century. Only question is, What would this look like? What if in an alternate timeline, Germany...
Now, just real quick, if you have seen this series, it's easy to do what ifs, but do they focus on, or when they do these, do they pick topics that could have definitely gone another way? Like, there's a lot of things where, okay, yeah, you can think about what would happen if it got different, but is it even in the realm of possibility? Not to say that that isn't necessarily the case at this point with what we're talking about, but that is something interesting to me, because I think it's it's worth more time to actually consider what if possibilities if it was actually possible, you know.
Question is, what would this look like? What if in an alternate timeline, Germany and the Central Powers won World War I? Let's
Okay.
go back to 1914 with the assassination of Austrian royalty Franz Ferdinand. Ferdinand was dead by the hands of a Serb nationalist, and the dominoes
Gavrilo
began to fall
Princip?
into place. Treaties certainly forced a lot of countries to declare war for their allies. There is one military decision that Germany made that almost certainly lost them the entire war.
Okay.
Invading Belgium. France had built up their military border in anticipation for a German attack. Germany, however, had a plan. The Schlieffen Plan.
Okay.
Bypassed the
Gonna wait
French
to
defenses
comment,
on the
but I wanna
border
see
by
what they-
invading
where they
through
go with
Belgium,
this.
which was undefended. By going around this meat grinder, the Germans would have easy access to Paris. Well, that's not so bad. Belgium's tiny. They can't defend themselves. But Germany ignored that Belgium had one key friend. The British.
Okay. Yeah. Want to add something to Schlieffen Plan. So the Belgium thing, right? You have to rewind. There's more elements at play here with this strategy, because the Schlieffen Plan and German strategy. This German strategy was focused not just on France but on Russia, specifically with how to fight a two-front battle when you have a France and a Russia, which assuredly would have been allies. And the Germans, they knew this. They had protocol, and they knew where the alliances were and all that stuff. So trying to make the most out of a very bad situation, which is to fight a two-front war, which is extremely difficult to do, of course. So speed of movement was so important for this, because basically the idea was Russia, by the way, had the largest army in Europe at this time, probably around 6 million or so. And however, it was believed that their mobilization would take a long time. It would take a long time, longer than like a France or something like that. So the idea was to potentially try to eliminate an enemy, one of the sides, before the other could sort of be ready. So they kind of have this idea that Russia's going to take a long time, so let's try to get a very quick end to a war with France. Okay. Kind of makes sense on paper there. So it was, how do you go to and take France as soon as possible? Well, the epicenter of France is definitely Paris. You take Paris, it's about it, right? As far as what France would be able to do. So then it was, how do you, as quickly as possible, get to Paris to take France? And that's where the Belgium question comes in, because the German-French border is a lot harder penetration-wise to get through, where going through the lowlands of Belgium, just from a geographic standing, could be beneficial. But there's big risk involved. Like you said, Belgium, especially at the start of this war, was a neutral, or the war hasn't started, but in this build-up here was a neutral nation. And at this time, Britain had not declared war, although Russia and France were now involved. I remember too, this is all happening within a few days. This snowball went quick. But one of the threats, of course, is that if you invaded Belgium, would that bring in England, right, into the war? And we find out, of course, it does. But it makes a little bit more sense, though, of why did they do this with this invasion of Belgium. From a strategic point of view, it makes a lot more sense if you look at the big picture.
Defend themselves, but Germany ignored that Belgium had one key friend, the British. And the British had one single condition that it stressed shouldn't be violated. Don't violate Belgian neutrality. Germany, in a Prussian fashion, believed more in military action than diplomatic consequences, and marched anyway. It was this single act that brought on the wrath of the British Empire, redefining the absolute scale this war would be fought on.
Avenge the
British
Belgians.
blocked German ports and cut the transatlantic cable between the United States and Germany. In this alternate timeline, for Germany to not lose the war, one major step is it simply doesn't invade Belgium. By doing this, Germany avoids immediate conflict with Britain. Now, this doesn't guarantee the Brits would stay out of it. Keep in mind a Central Power victory would cement Germany.
But it potentially avoids with Britain, because that's another what-if scenario. Would the British have joined the war if Germany had not invaded Belgium? Because then you're already getting what-if questions. One thing, it would have made an invasion of France much harder, Maybe Britain waits to see how dire of need France has. Maybe if they were to cross just the French border, they would come across, or they would join the war. So there's definitely already a bunch of what if scenarios. But yeah, you got to take everything with a grain of salt here.
Doesn't guarantee the Brits would stay out of it. Keep in mind a Central Power victory would cement German dominance in Europe, and we can't have that. But without a provocation, though, this would buy Germany enough time to gain a major advantage over France, even if it was a year before Britain entered. It was 4 years of trench warfare between the British and French combined against Germany alone. France alone wouldn't even have the population to sustain a German offensive. So in this alternate timeline, Germany's military keeps France at bay through a small border they share at Alsace-Lorraine, while the majority of their forces fully mobilize against Russia, aiding their Austrian allies. Whether or not this alternate strategy would work, who knows?
Yeah.
But it does solve the whole keep Britain out
sure.
of the war thing. No matter what German military strategy is, resentment is still assured against the Tsar. Revolution can still undermine the Russian war effort like in our time.
Okay, just so I'm getting this. The scenario they're describing right now is, okay, they don't go through Belgium. They try a Western invasion across the French-German border, but the French are able to hold themselves. Is that what they're saying? Thus, you're still fighting a two-front war then, right? Unless you're assuming they fight the French, agree to stop fighting each other because of a holdup, and then they move all to the Russians. Kind of follow along with that here.
And force the Russians to negotiate. I'll focus on this aspect in a bit. The German forces on the Eastern Front now come to the west. Millions of troops fighting a small area until one side finally breaks. And without Britain, that side is most likely France.
So it's a flip of the Schlieffen Plan. It's like go to Russia before France. Is that? I guess that's what they're trying to say here of what that would be like. Then you have to imagine what the success would be, because in the real war, the Germans had far more success in pushing inward in the east than they did the west anyway. So, in the end, you could see that potentially happening.
Germany then invades. In our timeline, Germany almost destroyed the French defense in 1917, before the Americans arrived. So it wouldn't be long before the French simply can't defend themselves and are pushed back. Soon, Paris falls. The war in the west and the east is officially over. Both sides tried to fight Germany and lost. Would Britain just sit back?
Wait, so they're saying in this scenario, Germany would beat Russia, like, completely and pull them out of the war, and then doing basically an about face and heading all the way to France? I think that's probably skimming a big assumption there, that would happen, at least in as timely of a fashion, as it was. Just trying to put out my thoughts as I'm seeing this. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of what ifs and things going on here. A bunch of them going on. It's more than just what if Germany won, right? There's so many other pieces to this.
Back and allowed Germany to beat two nations in a war, achieving complete dominance over mainland Europe? Probably not. They'd declare war. It's unlikely, however, that they'd win. As the British were the masters of the sea, the Germans were the dominant military of the land. It's doubtful Britain alone could put a dent in the German occupation. America would simply stay out of the war. In exchange for a ceasefire, an agreement is made very similar to the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. In just one signing of a document, Germany and Austria-Hungary seized Poland, the Baltic states, Belarus, and all of the Ukraine and Crimea. By 1918, most
but stop short of Moscow.
Either a Germanic puppet or in the empire.
Okay.
Why would they do this? Germany feared Russian dominance. Russia for centuries was this backwater European wannabe. It had size and manpower, but was woefully poor and far behind technologically. In the last few decades, something changed. It began industrializing rapidly, and if Russia fully industrialized, there was no defeating them. By seizing their valuable lands, diplomatically by military agreement, Germany legally can neuter the Russian state. Quarter of their population, now German. Most of their coal, now German. But this is just the beginning. If there's one thing Slavs don't like, it's being invaded and occupied. So the
Right.
2 million German troops in the east now face a guerrilla war against insurgents, including ones funded by the Soviets. France is blamed for putting the wars to
it would definitely be like that. This would be an incredibly multinational empire, and this has always been an issue in Eastern Europe, trying to do that because it is so ethnically diverse and ethnically proud, and willing to, fight for that kind of independence. You know what I mean? So, I mean, just look at what actually happened with, in those years with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and them trying to keep up such a diversity. I mean, look what happens when Austria-Hungary ends. Look how many nations were created out of that because of all the cultural and political differences, right? So you have this big empire on paper, looks like, all right, it's this big German-controlled thing, but that would be way, way harder in practice than in just theory.
the reparations on Germany, but it's not like Germany would be so kind if they were in the same position. In this alternate timeline, Germany keeps Alsace-Lorraine. They impose massive amounts of war reparations, and the French people have to deal with a brief German occupation. Imagine France at this time. They had lost 2 wars now to the new German Empire, basically powerless to stop a state that was practically brand new. It's not hard to imagine elements of French society would be resentful against the Germans. Does this mean we'll have an alternate French Hitler? Probably not. Even if France actually did have a French Hitler, they...
It's interesting to think about. Would there have been a French Hitler? Somebody that would have been so distraught from the loss from the French perspective that they would come to try to get revenge in a way. Something to, interesting to think about.
French Hitler? Probably not. Even if France actually did have a French Hitler, they just don't have the population to win a war. World War I was defining for one reason. It set the stage for who the winners and losers would be in the 20th century. Not just in terms of borders, but ideology. Old European aristocratic ways died with the Kaiser and the Austrian Emperor. Don't think Germany and Austria expand monarchies to France or make the king a new power in Britain, but they do send a message that old European aristocracy and nobility is still relevant. It's very possible that the 20th century could have become the German century.
Yeah, because the empires, right, these empires of Central Europe are going to collapse with that. So in actual reality with Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. And so if World War I wins, does that continue that legacy of the empire, as we kind of know it today? I mean, yeah, it would, right? And would that be a blow for supposed democracies, right? This idea if, democracies were so great, then why don't they win wars? You know what I mean? Could be another thought they would have said.
The Germans wanted an economic union that united all people of Europe around Germany. Without the rise of the Nazis, intellectuals, including people like Albert Einstein, continued their scientific endeavors inside Germany. However, we're just getting started. The Central Powers have established themselves as victors in this war. What matters is how they use this victory. This, however, is one scenario. This is Cody of Alternate History Hub.
Okay. Yeah, plenty to think about. Ugh, look at that. Yikes. I'll leave you with this as I wrap up, I guess, this photo. Okay, so, yeah, ton of what ifs. There's just one after. And it's hard to continue to do that and try to keep one frame of I guess try one frame of kind of viewing this and one kind of branch here, because if you're doing an alternate history for every little event, then you just become these branches that are never ending and you couldn't stay on a straight topic for very long. So I could see why they kind of have to just assume some things, like I talked about of some of the events they kind of just assumed we might go one way or the other, again, because I think it would branch off so far you would have no direction, and you would just create this endless branching of what ifs, and that's kind of counterproductive for this. It would be too time consuming and really not that entertaining, to be honest. So okay, but yeah, I like some of the things that they were talking about with maybe what had happened with the Schlieffen Plan if it had gone differently. Big question. They were going with Belgium. If they had decided not to go to Belgium, would the British still have entered or not? And then if they didn't go to Belgium, what would that have done with the Western Front? With that sort of thing, would it have given the French a chance to hold on that way? But then also, would the French have been able to hold on without Britain's help, just by themselves? That's another what if, and they kind of, were assuming some things about that. And then, but yeah, I mean, I don't think, try to think if anything is completely out of the realm of possibility, and I don't know about that. That's what I was saying at the beginning of the video. I think it's important probably for these alternative history type videos to make sure these what if events are at least in the realm of possibility. And I think that will make it more interesting with that. Well, definitely gonna check out part 2, so be sure you watch out for that, and we'll see a little bit more if they're gonna go after some different potential outcomes from the events we already had, or they're gonna build upon where they left off here. I guess either way, there's still a lot you can potentially talk about. So yeah, I'll look forward to doing that. All right, awesome. If you like this original video, make sure you go down to the description, give them a like and subscribe. Be awesome if you subscribe to this channel so you can kind of continue on with this, and I'd love to have you on board. Okay, a few other plugs for a few things. Patreon members. Make sure you are checking the Patreon for the weekly Patrons Pick Poll, so you can have a say in one of the videos that comes out each week. And so polls are up right now, or a poll is, so make sure you do that. If you haven't joined Patreon yet and you would like to do that, love to have you along. Currently, any patron donation levels or pledge levels make you eligible for the poll. So as much or as little as you do, you're part of it, and I appreciate that, so much. Another plug: if you'd like to join our history community on Discord, there will also be a link down below, so you can come and join us as well. All right, well, thank you again for your support, and glad to have you along, and we'll just keep on learning more history. All right, okay, bye.